Akaziensendo-Podcast.
Yunyan was sweeping the yard. So he was doing some. You can relate to that. Yunyan was sweeping the yard, and his brother Daowu came by and saw him. The way we sometimes see each other here. He saw him and said, "Oh, too busy." Yunyan replied, "You should know there's always one who's not busy." His brother, the smarty, said, "Oh, so are there two moons?" And Yunyan held up his broom and said, "Which moon is that?" Actually, that's a famous story in Zen practice. As a famous story about Zen practice. I think what I would like to explore with you today a little bit more is what I mean by the practice of resting. Why I recommend it as the sole practice you basically can do. I want to say have to do. You don't have to do it, but you can do it. And how or why this practice of resting is the same as saying, I followed the schedule completely. And that's my intention. That's what I would like to talk about. Let's find out what I will talk about. The story, what I like about the story is, on the one hand, it's totally concrete. It's a story about our daily life, whether it's in the monastery or in Athens or in Berlin or Belfast, it doesn't really matter. Somebody's doing something. And maybe it's an inner voice that says too busy, or the person gets this kind of reflection. Like, hey, what are you actually doing? You're too busy. And on a more metaphoric level, it's about waking up to the mind ground. That's what the yard. I always see a wide open yard in a Chinese monastery, surrounded by Zendo and Buddha halls, wide and open. It's somebody who is practicing resting to open up to the realization of the mind ground. So it's both. Which moon will I be talking about? Practice of resting. What I still find inspiring and interesting is that, let's say, in our kind of culture, what used to be called the West, only very recently are we having an understanding that the human mind, I'm also fine with calling it the nervous system. I'm even still okay with calling it the brain. Even though these are reductionist words for what Buddhism calls the mind, but still, it's fine. An understanding has only recently evolved that the human nervous system can be trained. It can be trained to open up to more conducive states for physical and mental health. And as I'm sure many of you know, many of the training techniques, so to speak, have been assembled mostly from Asian and East Asian spiritual cultures, including Buddhism and Zen. I'm simplifying here. I'm aware of that, but hopefully that makes things more clear. The human mind, which is very complex, but basically it has two modes of functioning. One could be described as a wide open awareness, and the other one I would simply describe as zooming in, focusing. And I don't know if that speaks to you. I think what we all experience all the time is a chaotic dance inside of our body-mind between wide openness and focusing and refocusing, and a mind that is actually focusing, which is a kind of concentration, still it is jumping around. The famous monkeys in the tree, which is actually a very lively image. And the mind is jumping around based on reasons which reason doesn't understand. That just came to me, but it rings true. We sometimes don't know why we are thinking about certain stuff, right? We don't. We just don't. And this activity of the mind constantly jumping around can be experienced as stressful. It can cause anxieties. It doesn't feel very peaceful. It doesn't feel that we are at rest. What I'm doing is I'm just trying to sketch out something, and hopefully in one way or another you can relate to it, or maybe also not relate to it. That's all fine. We can talk about it. The mind jumping, for example, from thought to thought, and this is of course something that meditators become very intimate with, because a more conventional understanding of meditation is that we are trying to let go of thought, or that we have this experience that instead of enjoying resting in the Kaisanji Zendo, our mind has this miraculous quality to go back to Athens or Berlin or Belfast or wherever, or it can go to tomorrow or 10 years from now. It's extremely creative, if you can see it as creativity. From my little knowledge of neuroscience, one purpose that people think this jumping around seems to serve is that we constantly scan our surroundings to have an idea of being in control. We scan our surroundings to find out what we need to control, what might be, put it very simply, dangerous to us. A more Buddhist take on why we engage in excessive thinking, a more Buddhist take, which actually is, I think, very much related to this neuroscientific idea, is that we constantly tell ourselves, or we have to tell ourselves, that we exist in a certain way. That is, we have to tell ourselves that we exist as autonomous beings. Because who would we be if suddenly it was simply very still and nothing would move? So one way to actually sweep the ground, to work with this mind that is constantly jumping, is to practice giving it a direction. And the direction I would call is the immediate presence of your life. So what I'm suggesting is, there is effort, hopefully relaxed effort in sitting Zen, but also in sweeping Zen, and so on, which is to train the mind thus that it learns to rest in the immediate present. To train the body-mind, to train ourselves thus that we learn to rest in the immediate present. I think this is what Yunyan does. That's his practice. That's what I think. He sweeps immediate present. He sweeps immediate present. He sweeps immediate present. And then we are being taught. We are being taught about the truth of impermanence. As simple as that. Because this is what the immediate present is. Like when we open up to the immediate present, we get it because it's so clear, it's apparent that everything changes all the time. It does. Now, I guess after reflecting about this a little bit, impermanence has these two sides or these two aspects for us. It can be scary. Everything will be taken away from us. Will be? Everything is taken away from us. What we have this morning is already gone. This can be scary. But the immediacy of this moment experienced, or doing a practice which I would simply describe as surrendering to just this, surrendering to just this, is life being totally alive. Because impermanence is reality. Permanence, which we wish for somehow, and which the human mind tries to create by thinking about the past and thinking about the future. It's another reason why our mind jumps around all the time. I say this again because I think it's a really important point. Resting, there it is. It's resting. Resting in right now is 100% opening up to impermanence. Impermanence as aliveness. Total, utter aliveness. What we usually do, because we are afraid of impermanence, is I kind of see it as an image. Is we try to extend. This is not our conscious doing. This is what's happening in us. We try to extend the very ungraspability of the immediate present into something that we can grasp and hold on to. And we either call it a self or we call it my life. My life in 5 days from now, for example. Which, excuse me, it's a fiction. It doesn't exist. Doesn't mean we can't make plans and buy ferry tickets to Athens. Doesn't mean that. It has nothing to do with that. So, to put it maybe even more direct, what I recommend, we have a few days left in the session, maybe, but you have, I'm sure, like right now, you have many opportunities left to rest in the immediate present, or that's slightly different, right? In the immediate presence of your life. Become still. Even while writing, or while thinking, or while talking. Become still while cutting vegetables in the kitchen, while sewing Buddhist robes between 3 and 4, or whenever. Become still in the middle of the activity in a way that's going on. This is an absorption or an immersion. It's a meditative absorption, if this term is interesting to you. I just felt I mentioned it. Basically, you're working on, can we say this? On absorbing yourself into the immediate present of your life, because if you see it, it's really the only life you have. And also, in most cases, it's joyful, because it's alive. So Yunyan sweeps the ground. His brother comes, Daowu, and says, "Too busy." Yunyan responds, "You should know there's always one who is not busy." From this aliveness of the immediate present, we respond, because it cannot be contained. It's alive. It's simple. It's meditation practice to work on this absorption into the immediate present. How can it be done? Well, maybe there are a few suggestions. But basically, it is about embracing your life fully and understanding that our life is not happening next week. Also, our life maybe 10 years ago doesn't stop us from being fully alive now. That's something we can sometimes think. No, it's alive. That's why this meditation is called no meditation in Zen. And then the no meditation is meditation. But this is play of words. Okay, so in the story, I think this is what this guy does with a broom. Because usually when people like me sweep the yard, I'm thinking about something else. I'm thinking about nicer things than sweeping the yard. Like that I could maybe go to the Zendo or to a meditation retreat or go to the movies, or why am I in this terrible situation, this estranged work, to bring this up again, in capitalism, that I have to sweep the yard and don't even get Mindestlohn. What is Mindestlohn in English? Minimum wage, thank you. And so on and so on. And in this way, which is my usual way, I'm only talking about myself. I don't want to generalize this. In this way, but this is what I'm really suggesting to you, I'm actually missing my life. Which is, there's no alternative to me sweeping the yard right now. There's no alternative to the function I have in this session if I really mean it, that our practice is to follow the schedule, but to sit here and talk. So what I'm trying to practice is to hand myself over to the practice of talking in a dharmic context. If I thought about it, I would be scared and run out the door. So the second practice is, and I try to also show this with my hand because it's a very physical thing. Like, yes, Zazen, in Zazen, we can concentrate, for example, on our breathing. I still recommend not to try to change our breathing. I hear some of you breathe in a way where I feel maybe let's talk about it. Because it seems to be a way of breathing where I might be wrong, where you try to get somewhere else. We try to change the way you're breathing. But resting in the immediate presence of your life, there's an insight. I really think it's an insight that's important, which is there is no alternative. There's no alternative to right now. That's important to learn, I think. Again, it doesn't mean we can't plan, we can't work on ourselves. It doesn't mean that. But there's a deep truth about there's no alternative to what is happening right now. And once we learn to rest in it, that's an important point, we are free. As long as we fight or mourn or are sad about what's happening right now, there's still some unconscious idea, oh, it could be different. Once we really open up to the immediacy of what's happening right now and rest in it, I'm suggesting to you, you will be free. Not some permanent freedom, only right now, but still. So then, of course, there's the yard. The way I see it is, it's a big Tang Dynasty Zen monastery. Sometimes 1,000, 2,000 people lived there. They were huge. They had huge yards. And I see this sole figure of a practitioner with a little broom in this huge yard. Also, the little I know about the architecture of these places, the way these buildings were placed on the ground, they were a symbolic representation of the structure and the nature of the universe. So this focus on the immediate present, once we establish this a little bit, it won't work all the time, but we can get there, really. then the alternative you have, this is a wonderful practice in itself, but just simply imagine this focus is being opened. It becomes as wide as the yard. Yeah, in meditation practice, it's often called sitting in open awareness or sitting in awareness. But do we really know what that means? It means we learn to rest in the aspect of spaciousness of the human mind. Now, here's the thing. The human mind is always spacious. It's never not spacious. Only because of this aspect of jumping around, right? This aspect of jumping around, we miss it. It's there. As if we were running through a yard and not seeing anything. The yard is right there. We can learn to rest in this spaciousness because the present moment, maybe I could say it like this, the present moment has these two aspects. One is its impermanence, or its presence, which is so present that we can't say when it starts and when it ends. It's absolutely fleeting. So we could say it's something small. It's a concentration on something small. And at the same moment, what we call the present moment is without beginning and without end. It doesn't have here or there or in between. It's simply life being wide and open. So as a practice, because I don't know, maybe this is new to you. Maybe this is already very established. Just for a few more minutes, I want to say, be creative. Maybe try this. In your sitting, try to sense the space around you. The Zendo. We have this capacity, we can see it, but we have this capacity, which is very subtle, to sense space. Sense the space of the Zendo. I think if this works a little, you already feel much more at peace. Then we are in this dramatic landscape. Maybe walking up and down the hill here, when our gaze goes out onto the Aegean Sea, try to feel this space. The more you practice feeling the space, now comes the obscure part with which I want to end. The more you sense the space, or you can sense the space so deeply that you will realize that what you're looking at is the other half of yourself. I want to say this again. First, simply practice sensing space in the conventional way. This is a room, space, but you can sense it. Maybe play with looking out at the sea. Once we learn to rest in it, that's what's insight. Insight is given to us, which I would like to express like this. If it's really true that this formulation comes from Plato, who also used to work in Athens, that what you're looking at is not a world out there. It is the other half of yourself which completes your life. With this, for now, I stop. Thank you very much for listening.
Das war eine Folge des Akazien-Sendu-Podcast. Wenn du deine Praxis vertiefen möchtest, bietet Akazien-Sendu eine Vielzahl von Meditations- und Kursangeboten, die dich auf deinem Zen-Weg begleiten können. Informationen dazu findest du auf unserer Homepage. Wenn du unsere Arbeit und unsere Podcasts unterstützen möchtest, freuen wir uns über deine Spende. Den Link zur Spendenseite findest du in den Shownotes oder auf akaziensendu.de.